Am I gonna burn myself on either mug or tea? Oh my god, that's so worth it. So worth it. Okay, cool, let's do this. Oh my god, right. This seems to just be a thing now wherever I sit down to do a video, my uterus is just like creeping around in the shadows, like cackling, being like, maybe, Rachel, maybe. So if I have to stop and be in pain for a second, that's what that is. Okay, guys, welcome back to How to Build a Story. This is part 4 now, and we're building the last of our story elements, which is effect, and then we're going to move on to outlining. This video is going to consist, I think you know the drill by now, of first, what is effect, and then we're going to speak about how do you brainstorm effect, brainstorming questions for effects. Then there's going to be a little bit of chat about character actions versus external consequences, a little bit on endings and resolutions, and then we're going to finish up, really. Some brief housekeeping on filing before we get started. As always, the exact format that you're using isn't as important really as your intent and what you're doing with it. As long as you have some kind of delineation between your workbook space, your splurgy brainstormy bit, and your curated space, your story codex, your story bible, your write-ups, and all that, then you're pretty much set. But I've got a couple of organisational tips for your filing anyway. So this, just to give you an example, is my story codex. This is my answer book. This is where I put all the stuff that I know I want to put in the book. Now I think as you finish your write-ups for your various story elements, you actually want to organise them by character, not the way I've done it here, which is first everyone's motivations, then everyone's conflicts, and then everyone's effects. This just means that when you get to outlining, there's a lot of flicking through from one person's motive to their conflict to their effect. So if you just do it by character, it'll eliminate that flipping back and forth. Since I did it that way, and I didn't realise that that was kind of stupid until I was basically done and it wasn't really worth going through and changing it all, I started using these little paperclip markers, which just helps me navigate through my sections a lot more quickly. I can go straight to each character instead of having to flip through all their individual pages. So it probably makes most sense to divide by character and then just maybe have a paperclip on their motive, then their conflict, and then their effect, so that you can find them all quite quickly. Something else that's relevant for effect in particular is that I originally was brainstorming all of my conflicts and numbering them. Obviously I've just used the 5 ideas method here, and then brainstorming all my effects and having them on a separate page. Something I've realised is actually a lot easier is to brainstorm my effects straight into my conflicts, just to wait after I've done both of them and then print them out together. And as you can see, I have my conflict here, and then I've brainstormed effects A, B, C, D, E, F, and I've just italicized them to break it up a little and make it easier to find. I just found it really speeded it up when I was outlining because I didn't have to flip between multiple pages. I can look at the conflict, I can pick which effect I want or which mix of effects I want, and I'm good to go. Okay, so as always, let's start with what the fuck is effect? As you guys have probably noticed by now, what you name things is really important to me, and this is one place where I'm not entirely sure I'm happy with it. I don't know that I necessarily like the word effect more than anything else, but I've been using it for the rest of the series, so I'm going to continue using it. Some other things I've thought about calling it would be outcome, reaction, consequence, twist, change, response, resolution. At its most basic, effect is just a change in your character's circumstances, and it can take one of 3 forms. First, it can be a positive effect. It can be a respite from the conflict that the character has been working through. It could be a small success. Not necessarily small, Rachel, don't judge. It can be a success, but this change puts the character closer to their motive goal. It gets them closer to achieving what they want. Or it might be positive more in the sense that the character has learned something or grown or changed. The second kind is a negative effect. So sometimes this can be another kind of conflict that has arisen from complications, maybe from other conflicts or the way that your character is trying to deal with them. This change puts your character further away from their goal, their motive, and these consequences are going to bring in new challenges for your character to deal with as the story goes on. The third kind of effect is resolution. So this change either fulfills or denies the character's motive goals and ends the story as either a comedy or a tragedy. And now this really is just the same principle as the other two, as a positive effect and a negative effect. It's just that this effect is important enough to your theme and what you're trying to say that it actually ends the story. So all resolutions are either positive effects or negative effects, or a mix of the two, but not all positive effects and negative effects are going to be resolutions, if that makes sense. Now, not everything has to be this clear cut. You can definitely have effects in certain scenes that are mixtures of positive and negative, that might put your character closer to their goal in one sense but further away in another. So say you've got a corny romance story. Character B's motive is that they are in love with A and they want to be with them. So you've got a scene and the effect for that is that A takes B aside and is like, B, I'm getting married tomorrow, but I really love you. And this is a really powerful effect for B, in both positive and negative, because obviously you've got the negative of, oh shit, my love is getting married tomorrow, but also, oh shit, my love is in love with me too. These things are going to force B to react. And in just the same way that conflict works, what counts as a really powerful effect for your story is going to determine on your motive. This is why you have to start with motive, because it is a chain reaction, you know, it works through everything else. An effect is relevant to your story only in as much as it is related to your motive. Example, we're bringing back Julie. She's probably tired of being an example by now, but she has to suck it up because that's her job. So the example is, Julie's motive is she wants to open a coffee shop. Her conflict over the story is that her car breaks down and fixing it costs all of her money, all of the money that she was going to use to open her coffee shop. So let's look at two possible effects for this scene. 1. Julie gets a tax return for the exact amount of money that she lost from her savings. This just resets everything to 0. It's not an effect for this story with a capital E, because it's not relevant to Julie's dream. It doesn't bring her any closer or further away. In terms of her motive, she's no better or worse off than when the story began. I mean, she is better in the sense that, you know, now she has a working car and she isn't broke, but having a working car and not being broke are not part of her motive of opening a coffee shop. So it's not relevant. So no, we don't care. It's not satisfying. It's not a good story. This is also an external consequence, which is going to be important later on. So let's try effect 2. Julie's had enough of this shit. She sells her car and she uses the money to fund her coffee shop. This is a character reaction rather than an external consequence. And it's a good effect, you know? Like, Julie can now go on and chase her dream. She's on the way to achieving her motive goal. Everyone's happy and satisfied. And it's all great. Let's finally get on to the actual process of brainstorming effects. So you want both your conflict and motive write-ups in front of you while you do this, and you'll mainly be working from the conflict one, but you want to have your motive right up there too, because that is about your character and who they are as a person, and that is going to determine how they react to things, which is a big part of effect, obviously. Like I've said, if you're using the 5 ideas method like me, I find brainstorming straight into my conflict write-up is really useful. If you're not, you know, find whatever format works for you. So you have your 2 write-ups, you pick your brainstorming method, and then you're just going to need to ask a brainstorming question. So here are some of the questions that you can use for brainstorming effects. Here are some questions specifically for character reactions. How could this character react in an interesting way? Now you can pick traits straight from your character profile, your motive write-up, and put them into the question to get more focused results. So if you're looking for reactions from a hero and they're just kind of coming across kind of passive and boring, you can say, how could this character react in a badass way? If you're looking at effects for villains, you could say, how could this character react in a cowardly way? You can say, how could this character be changed by this development? Questions for more external consequences would be things like, what could come of this? What effects might this have? What unforeseen consequences might there be? What unintended outcomes might arise from this? And for resolution, you might ask, how could this all end? Now you might have noticed there that I was breaking up character reactions from external consequences. And here's a little bit about why. So all effects, positive, negative, and resolutions, can either be because of characters' actions that they've taken or because of external events out of their control. Or it can be a mixture, and which of these you choose for a particular effect is going to really deeply affect your themes. So say your theme is a version of the American dream, which is roughly the idea that everyone can be successful as long as they work hard enough. So your conflicts there are probably going to be external to your hero, and when they succeed it's because of actions they've taken and because they've worked hard. But maybe you're aiming for a theme something like the opposite. So maybe thematically you want to say people's success happens regardless of their actions. So in that story, a hardworking hero might completely fail and a really lazy, awful villain might succeed. I know you can take this really far and you can get really philosophical about free will and determination. It's a rabbit hole. You probably shouldn't go down it. But just be aware that this is something you kind of need to think about when you're thinking about effect in your story. At the very least, you want to avoid your main character succeeding too easily because things just fell into their lap, because the audience is going to feel a bit cheated by that. The solution to that is just to brainstorm both. Brainstorm character reactions to things, brainstorm external consequences for things, mix and match, see what's most powerful, see what gives you most bang for your buck. So let's move on to endings then. Like I've said, endings are a specific kind of effect, but not every effect is an ending. So when should you be brainstorming enough to get complete endings for your stories? Well, you probably want to do at least a cursory brainstorm while you're doing the rest of your effects, at least to just prime your brain on it and get you thinking about it, but you don't want to force it either. I find it's often easier to brainstorm endings from your outline rather than your raw story elements, because everything's a lot more focused and sequential, gives you a bigger picture. Of course, if ending ideas come to you while you're brainstorming your effects, definitely write them down, but be prepared to do a bit more brainstorming specifically for your endings, either in the outlining phase or maybe in the drafting phase. And while the stakes for brainstorming your ending are a bit higher, it's still basically the same process. You're just brainstorming more effects and being a bit more discerning about what exactly you want to pick, and thinking a lot more about what it's going to say about the rest of the story, thematically and otherwise, etc. And that's basically it, really. This was kind of a bitch of a video to make in the filming process because, you know, my uterus is trying to kill me a wee bit. I'm used to it by now. It's still slightly insulting. I'm supporting your existence, so you could at least try and help me out. Effects are a wee bit more complicated than conflict and motive, to be honest, and so it took me quite a while to script this. Please let me know if I was confusing or if you want any clarification on anything. Like, making this video has helped me define it a lot more clearly for me as well, so that's what's the point if I'm not getting something out of it? So I'm Rachel Stephen, I'm a novelist and a YouTuber, part-time Queen of Hell, and if you find this interesting or helpful or at least mildly amusing, please give it a like, it would really help me out. And if you're new, maybe you want to subscribe, because, you know, I've researched the effects of not subscribing and I don't want to freak you out, but it's probably safer to click just in case. And yeah, that's basically it, really. I went and heated up my tea and now I'm done, so that's useful. How much do you love this mug though? It's stunning and I'm like, oh my god, copper! But it's metal, so it gets too hot to hold, which is why I've got this like mug warmer folded around the handle. As you can tell, it's a bit of a mess behind me here, because I have finished my story building for North of the End. So this series of videos the process of doing it for my book has taken me about a month, and that is, it's for a second draft, but it wasn't, the first draft was almost completely unplanned, so it's basically like doing it from scratch, really. And I finished my outline, which is this little guy here, which I'm really proud of because, like, some little copper thing, it's got paper clip dividers. Aww. I'm working on my revision. It's going well and awful, you know, just standard really for writing. I got an undercut, which is really fun, because, yeah, like, I've got a lot of hair and actually I've figured out I don't really need that much hair in my life. It's just extra work, isn't it? So fuck that bit of hair. Oh yeah! I hit 100 subscribers. Yeah, thank you everyone who has subscribed. I know it probably doesn't seem like a lot for a lot of people, but I am just starting out and I'm a really little channel and I've been working quite hard, so it's really exciting to me, and I think celebrate everything, you know, like your milestones are not everyone else's milestones. So yeah, and there's gonna be a bonus video for 100 subs. At some point, it's gonna be Ross doing my makeup and we're both gonna be sort of drunk, I think. That's the plan, but I just need to figure out when we can actually do that. God. Ooh. Okay, if we could just stop now with the pain and the stuff, that would be my preference. Relationship relationship. If you could just stop the story. Okay, you win. It's fine. I'm trying to do shit. I'm trying to live my life here. Ugh. I don't know why I needed that sentence. Between. I guess. This tea's so good though. Why is it so good?